Hello and welcome back. It is Jack Mack with High Top Sports Georgia here to go over and recap Georgia's dominating, and I mean dominating, victory over the Texas Longhorns last night. We're going to cover it all from that special defensive performance that Kirby and the boys produced. Offensive struggles, regardless of the win, got some things to work on with Carson Beck, the wide receivers dropping balls, as well as we're going to get into the officiating. Weird. I guess you can call it weird. I have another word for it. Kirby had another word for it, but we're going to get into it all. Bottom line, how about them dogs? And let's start with the good old horns down for the boys and girls. I mean, the criticism that I'm sure the dogs heard all week, I heard it, Greg McElroy, everyone at ESPN saying, how can Georgia stay in this game? Texas has advantages in the trenches, more weapons outside, and it's obvious the dogs' defense took that to heart, right? And they came out with a fire I have not seen in a couple years since Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter were still on that defensive front. I mean, we were able to get home with 4 all night long. I mean, we did bring some blitzes that got home with Dalen Everett in the first half with that huge hit. But for the most part, we were able to disrupt everything that the Texas Longhorns wanted to do just with 4 guys. Mykel Williams, Jalen Walker, man, what a game from him. He made himself a lot of money last night. But all in all, the entire defense played great. Linebackers were swarming to the ball. The secondary, they're the ones that received the most criticism after that Bama game, especially Julian Humphrey with that last touchdown surrendered to Ryan Williams. They heard the noise and they produced. They came out with their A game. That says a lot about this team. Kirby continues to say that how resilient they are, and it is coach speak, I guess, but it's true. I mean, you could see it. Not many teams can come back 28-0 against the Alabama Crimson Tide in Tuscaloosa. That showed me a lot. And even though they didn't play their best game that day, I knew that there was something special with them, and they showed that tonight. Thankfully, those picks early from Carson Beck did not turn into a hole like it did in Tuscaloosa. But like I said, that defense, there was no one that was going to beat them today. You saw they put Arch Manning in for a little bit. That didn't work. Got a strip sack almost immediately. Nobody, Peyton Manning could have came in last night. And it wouldn't have helped. It wouldn't have mattered, right? Georgia just had a different fire. Dalen Everett, man, we hadn't heard much of him all year, really. I mean, pretty quiet today. I mean, he looked like a man possessed. I mean, that hit that he had in the first half, you could feel it. You could feel that hit changed everything, got the sideline going. And from that point forward, Texas was in for a long night. With the turnovers, Georgia has had some struggles, I guess, turning the ball over. Haven't seen the spiked turnover pads as much as I would have liked. But, hey, they made all up for it tonight with 3, I think, maybe 4 strip sacks that we got. That first one with the carry him around for the ball, I thought for sure we were going to scoop and score that. But regardless, I mean, we were everywhere. And you could see with that picture before halftime was hilarious of Quinn Ewers, Arch Manning looking like they saw ghosts, reminded me of that Jets game on Monday Night Football a few years back when the quarterback said he was seeing ghosts. But
of course, this show is brought to you by BetUS. And when you use the code YouTube150 at BetUS.com on your first deposit, you get back 150%, up to $2,000. Now, you can gamble on NFL, college football, basketball, baseball. The World Series are coming up. We got college football at an all-time high. Heisman winners are going back and forth. Who's going to the SEC? Who's going to the Big 12? All kinds of things. You can literally gamble on anything you set your pretty little mind to. And on your second and third deposit, you get back 125%, up to $2,000. So be sure to go check out BetUS.com. Use the code YouTube150 to take advantage of these offers while they still last. Now back to the show.
Like I said, there's nothing that they could have done to buy themselves more time from that pass rush tonight. It was special to see. On the other side of the defense, the offense had some struggles. I mean, this game in our group chat, we were texting, it should have been 35-0 at halftime instead of 23-0. I mean, the offense really did their best to keep Texas in the game. Carson Beck, again, with the turnovers. I know the receivers were not helping him out a ton, had some early drops by Dylan Bell, but Carson Beck, it's just something about him going on the road. He's rattled. I mean, he gets rattled, and I hate it. But he's got to get over it. Has anyone ever? I would think that Kirby went up to him at some point and say, "Dude, you can't be nervous, dude. Grow up." I mean, that's what I thought. I mean, he just we just cannot have that with our Georgia quarterback. I mean, we really just can't. Because one day our defense may not show up like they did tonight, and we're going to need Carson Beck to be flawless. No turnovers like he did tonight. I mean, that one to Lawson Lucky is a 5-yard slant pass in the red zone. Throws it a little too high, and it's a pick. I mean, just have to focus a little bit more, I feel like, with Carson. Plus, with him, I don't want this is going to sound bad no matter how I say it, but just the look on his face in the first half, he just doesn't look like he wants to be there. Looks like he's just, I don't know. He's just not into it. He's just not into the game. He's not, I mean, this is Georgia versus Texas. You're on the road. I want to see some fire out of my quarterback like we did against Alabama in the second half. Right. But we got the win, but Carson Beck, I mean, I mentioned it on the pregame show with Shelton, the girlfriend. I think there's some truth to that. I think this TikTok Haley Cavender's in his head. He's trying to be Superman way too much. He's got so many weapons around him. As we saw, when they went away from trying to do longer passes and just stick to give the ball to ETN, screen to Arian Smith, just short passes, that's all we needed to do. We could keep it pretty vanilla, get the ball to our guys in space, make them miss some tackles. That was our offense tonight for the most part. And I felt like it took a few possessions for Bobo to be like, all right, Carson just doesn't have it tonight. Let's lean on ETN. Let's try to get it to our weapons. I mean, I don't love the game that Bobo called. Like I said, it took way too long for him to switch things up, start being a more run first team with ETN. It took him too long. We should have been up, like I said, maybe 35-0 at halftime if we would have taken full advantage of some of those turnovers. But hey, on the bright side, offensively, ETN showed up today. This is the guy that we thought we were going to get from Florida all year long. And hey, I'll take it. Show up in the big games. That's all you need to do, ETN. Man, what do you have? 2 touchdowns, one out of the backfield with that patented Georgia toss sweep. Would love to see more of that. But hey, hats off to ETN. Great game from him. Speaking of that toss play that we scored on first, why are we not under center more, especially when Carson is struggling? I would love to see us line up under center and punch the defense in the mouth, run downhill, get the toss sweep going, but give them a different look. I just hate running the ball out of the shotgun like we're doing. It's ugly. It hasn't worked. So yeah, I hope, and I don't think this is going to happen, but I would love to see more of this under center, fullback in the game, old school Georgia football. I mean, we had the defense to represent the old school Georgia football, but the offense, I would love to see a little bit more of that traditional Georgia running game. And there was a more concerted effort to get it going last night, but I just would like to see it done a different way. You know, like I said, a little bit more under center. And hey, if that's not working, instead of doing the shotgun runs, the zone runs, the HB draws, I would love to see more of the halfback screens, swing passes, things like that to get them going. Anything really, but the run the ball out of the shotgun. I just hate that look. It hasn't worked too well this year. So I'd love to see some pivot there. But offensive line played great. You could see what a big addition it is to have Jared Wilson back in the center of everything. They were getting to the second level, especially in the first half. They were getting to the Texas linebackers. ETN had more room than he's ever had all year long last night. And I give a lot of credit to that offensive line, Jared Wilson. Tate Ratledge would have loved for him to play, but it looks like he's getting closer. Just a great statement game also for that Georgia offensive line. Again, I know I'm preaching on it, but this is the type of game that I know I did, and most Georgia fans, I'm sure, needed to see. We needed to see that tough, physical team that won us 2 out of the last 3 national championships. That's kind of been hit or miss so far this year, and we saw it both sides of the ball. I know I mentioned the defensive front four having an exceptional game. I cannot say enough, but the offensive line as well. They punished that defensive front, and you could tell by the end of the game that Texas secondary, the linebackers, they wanted no more. They were done. That last drive that Georgia had, when Texas made it a 1-score game after that bogus interception call, and I'm going to get more into that in a second. That drive that Carson Beck made when it was 23-15, Georgia is backed up inside their own 10, have 2 plays in a row, didn't do anything, maybe a drop ball in there somewhere. It's 3rd and 10, end of the 3rd quarter, and Carson Beck, standing in his own end zone, makes a heck of a throw to Arian Smith that won us the game. I mean, if we punt the ball right there, that Texas gets the ball at the 50-yard line, and they're driving in to potentially tie the game. That throw was unbelievable. Again, Carson didn't have his best stuff, but he made a couple big plays when we absolutely needed it. So give credit where credit is due. Arian Smith caught it. Thank goodness. Can't say that for all of these Georgia receivers. I mean, Dylan Bell, first 2 plays of the game, had catchable balls. That would have been great to get a fast start. But, my point with that is Carson didn't play good. Bobo didn't call the best game, but the whole offensive unit is not together right now. No one's helping each other other than Etienne. He played a great game last night. Other than that, the offense was, as we've been seeing throughout the year, hit and miss, inconsistent, some good moments, some bad moments. The turnovers, again, they reared its ugly head. So got some things to work on. Definitely some things Kirby can point to improve on this week. Got the bye. Headed into the bye before Florida at the end of the month. That will be much needed after just an emotional game like that. So, yeah, to get into the drama, I guess you could say, with the pick. Never seen anything like that watching a Georgia game, watching any game ever. Fans throwing things onto the field. I have seen that, being a Braves fan, some Braves fans were doing that with the infield fly rule back, about a decade ago now. I'm sure my Braves fans remember that, but they didn't change the call in that Braves game. I can promise you that. I mean, Texas students throwing things onto the field. Let me start over. So Carson Beck throws an interception, his 3rd one, and they throw a flag. Top of the route, there was some contact. I mean, it wasn't a ton. I'll give it to you. It was not a ton of contact, but they called it. They threw the flag. They cannot have a huddle in the middle of a game because the home team, who the flag is on, is throwing beer onto the field. And then after 5 minutes or so goes by, say, actually, we got it wrong. 1st and 10, 1st and goal, Texas. I mean, that's the craziest thing I've ever seen. And in the moment, I was like, oh, okay, here we go. If Georgia wins this game, they're going to just point to this play and say, oh, well, Georgia got bailed out by the officials. So no one can say that, right? They gave Texas every call they could ask for, and they still lost by double digits. So the way it turned out, I'm happy with. There's no excuses that they can make at this point, but still, someone's got to take a look at the process for something like that. I mean, there is no process. There is no rule saying once you throw a flag, you can just pick it up. I mean, you don't do that, especially after you huddle. It's not a reviewable play. The most bizarre thing I've ever seen. Thank goodness it did not negatively affect Georgia to the point of losing. But still, I mean, I would love for Greg Sankey to look in there and maybe come out with a statement today or tomorrow about what the process is going forward. I mean, again, my Georgia fans know Tyler Simmons being onside. I would have loved for that to be, overturned a few years ago. Georgia would have 3 national championships, but it doesn't work that way. These things typically go against Georgia. So I need this fixed pronto. So Greg Sankey, get in there, talk to these SEC officials. I mean, this is the premiere of college football in the SEC. And primetime game, you can't have stuff like that happening. And it wasn't just that. I mean, ETN, second and goal on that touchdown drive where I was just speaking of Carson converting that third down, backed up, finishing that drive off with a touchdown with ETN. We had to score 2 times on that drive. Second and goal, they reviewed it. ETN was clearly in, stretching the ball over the pylon. And they went up against us there, and we had to score again. Kirby spoke to this after the game, mentioning, that word for word, I think he said they tried to rob us. The officials tried to rob us, and that's true. I mean, that's what it looked like to me. I don't know what has happened since we won that second national championship. I have a theory that because of how badly Georgia beat TCU in that game, 60-7, pissed off some advertising people, that want to show off their products or whatever during that game. And it was a snoozer 5 minutes in. So I think, call me crazy, but I think that has something to do with it. They want to get back at Georgia for probably losing some money that game. Also, the schedule. I mean, this schedule is beyond crazy. At Texas, at Alabama, at Ole Miss. Not complaining. It's going to benefit the Dogs. Georgia needed that Alabama game to play like they did last night. But anyway, just get that feeling that people are against Georgia. Doesn't matter. Us against the world. We don't need anybody with us. Officials making calls for us. Georgia Bulldogs are the Georgia Bulldogs. And you could see that standard that Kirby talks about is still here to stay. No matter what anybody says, the Georgia Bulldogs are still the Georgia Bulldogs. That defense is still going to be that defense. They're going to have some guys to get after the quarterback. They're going to be well coached, disciplined, and not make too many huge mistakes outside of those Carson Beck turnovers. Georgia is still Georgia, and that is the point of the game from last night. Is everyone can be quiet. The Kings, as you can see behind me, are still in town. Saban's gone. The road comes through Athens for this national championship, and everyone was put on notice last night that the Dogs are still the Dogs. Like I said. And like I said, after the Alabama game, we're going to go to Texas. We're going to win that game. We're going to go to Oxford. We're going to win that game for sure. And then Tennessee, they come home. That's going to be a big game, especially if Tennessee still has one loss. I had the thought last night, I'm sure Tennessee fans for about 15, 20 minutes were feeling phenomenal. They beat Bama. They probably were doing the old deductive reasoning in their head with, oh, well, if Bama beat Georgia, we beat Bama, maybe we can beat Georgia. Not this year. So yeah, I'm sure they were feeling great for 20 minutes, turned on that Georgia game. It was like, yep, all roads still do lead through Athens. I'm sure they think they can still win that game. That's just how Tennessee fans are. But we'll be waiting for them in November. And I have full confidence in that game. Need to get some things figured out on the offensive side of the ball with Carson Beck, but we got some time to do that. Got a bye week, get his head right. Who knows? Maybe even break up with your girlfriend, man. We got to win our third national championship here. Some things are more important, right? Stop being selfish. It's just a thought. But Carson, do better. Man, trying to think if there's any other thoughts I had from last game. I mean, bottom line is the Georgia defense is going to cause havoc to whoever they play for the rest of the year, as long as we stay healthy. And I think Georgia should be number one in the rankings after what they were saying about Texas leading into this game. It's only right for Georgia to be number one. They beat that team that you were just crowning in October to be the national champion. So I expect the Dogs to be number one, but you know how it is. Georgia usually gets slighted in things like this. So that's fine. Number two, keep that chip on our shoulder, and we march forward bye week, and then we are heading to Jacksonville to take care of them Gators. But yeah, feel good. Great game. And how about them Dogs, man? Thanks again for watching. Like, comment, subscribe what you think. Comment what you think. Subscribe to the channel, and we will be back next week with the bye week news. Go Dogs.